Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of The Podcast. The podcast where I trick my friends to come on and talk about video games. Today's episode I brought Cameron on and we discussed everything Marvel, DC and superhero orientated in the video game industry. So please stick around or I'll cry. Hello, welcome to The Podcast. Today I've got a very special guest on. I've brought the president himself of the Gamer Club onto this episode of the podcast. Fuck. Thanks for joining us, Cameron.
Oh,
I'm glad.
you're welcome.
I'm very grateful that you've taken time out of your presidential duties to come on my little podcast.
Yeah, you're right. This is actually the safest I've felt in a while. I've not been trying to shake off all the assassins that are after me. For once.
Did you hire any of them, or?
Well, I didn't hire any assassins.
Are you sure? You sure this isn't some sort of manipulation to keep you in office for another 4 years?
No.
Okay. Anyway, so you're a gamer. You're a gamer, right? What's that like?
You know what? Pretty sad, in all honesty.
You know what? That's fair. That's not even any of the questions I actually have to ask you. That's just one I felt that I needed to ask.
Yeah, just
yeah.
generally, yeah, just a bit sad.
You know, just a bit of character building for the audience. So anyway, you're a gamer. You kind of like your I guess kind of nerdy shit. So like Marvel and DC. I'm the same. I don't mean that as an insult, obviously. But you kind of like that kind of stuff. So is there any kind of superhero form of media that you kind of like to see adapted into a video game, or any kind of?
Yes,
okay.
There is. There's quite a few. The entire lineup from the sort of Defenders from the Netflix sort of series. I'd like to see an Iron Fist video game, a Daredevil video game, a Luke Cage video game, a Jessica Jones video game. I think those they'd be all quite similar, but I think the gameplay would be...
I think the Jessica Jones one would be quite unique, because the whole thing is that she's a detective, so you kind of do a similar thing with the Arkham games, where you make it detective work a big part of the gameplay.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it would go a little bit more in depth than the Arkham games in that regard, though.
Oh yeah, because the thing with Batman is he is the world's greatest detective, but he relies a lot on gadgets and tech, and it kind of pushes the gap a little bit between real detective work to the kind of more sci-fi techie shit that just doesn't exist to help him find shit. So I think that'd be kind of interesting to see a Jessica Jones kind of video game that was more focused on the detective side of it, or even just have it as a prominent feature.
Yeah, I think Jessica Jones would showcase a unique not unique, but more focus on the PI side of things rather than the sort of high tech gadgety stuff like you were saying. Okay,
yeah, I definitely. When you say a kind of Defenders kind of line of video games, do you mean in the sense of how Netflix is doing it as their own separate shows, but they come together kind of thing? So each Defender has their own video game, but then there's another video game where it ties everything together? Or do you just mean even as just individual kind of, the Jessica Jones video game, but it doesn't tie into I was going to say Nick Cage, that's his name.
That's slightly different from Luke Cage.
Yeah. I mean, one is easily more powerful than the other, but...
Yeah, I mean, Luke Cage couldn't do anything to Nick Cage.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the bees.
I mean, yeah, he got the bees, and he got the vampire powers.
Mm-hmm. But, I was sort of more meaning along the lines of, individual games, and then maybe there's a team-up game, but even then, maybe not. It's, I don't know, I think that a lot of these sort of street-level heroes make for better video games than, a lot of the sort of big, grandiose sort of...
Yeah.
Hyper-powerful, but not really had many of those, so I can't really comment on that, because another hero I would really like a video game of is The Flash.
That would be interesting. The only issue I see with that is that because of how overpowered DC has built him up to be, that's about it. So I think it would take some...
I would want, is it Sucker Punch Games that made Infamous Second Son?
Yeah.
I would want them to make it.
Okay, that'd be kind of cool.
Because...
I mean, they're experienced with video games of the superhero genre.
Yeah, but also quite more specifically is that in Infamous Second Son, one of the powers you get allows you to run at super speed, and they handled that in quite a fun way.
That was a
so
pretty cool
just focusing on that more, I think they could make a very well-made Flash video game.
Honestly, I do like the Flash. I stopped watching the TV show after the start of the fourth season, but I do like the character. That's kind of the weird thing where there's a lot of, like, Avengers characters who I like, but only when they're, you know, as a squad, as the Avengers. But DC is the opposite, where I don't like the Justice League. I don't like the Justice League as a team. But I like the Flash, I like Cyborg, I like Batman and shit like that. But I just don't like them as a unit.
The individual parts of DC's sort of lineup are very unique and interesting, but when they all band together, it's, I don't know, it's like splashing up multiple different buckets of paint on a canvas.
It just feels like with Marvel, it feels more like a very neat kind of palette, whereas DC, it just feels like throwing everything at the fucking canvas to make a painting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Marvel Ultimate Alliance is a game we've talked a lot about, and it's fair to say it's been a huge part of both our childhoods. Would you say that played an important role in developing your interest, or, like, you know, awakening, I guess, giving you the interest in comic books and kind of like Marvel as a, you know, greater whole?
Oh, 100%, 110%. Before Marvel Ultimate Alliance, the only superhero stuff I was really interested in was Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four from their respective movies.
Did you ever play the games for them?
Actually, no, I didn't. I played the Fantastic Four game, not the Spider-Man game. I played the Fantastic Four games. Later, after Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I played the Spider-Man 3 game on the Wii.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
But the Ultimate Alliance got me hooked on a lot of different characters. Like, I had no idea who Captain America was, who Thor was, who
Deadpool.
Deadpool was. Yeah. No, I got really into Deadpool because of that game.
Yeah, it's definitely a good game, a very good first introduction to Marvel, because it offers. It's not like you go and see Captain America or you go see Spider-Man in movies and you're just introduced to Marvel through Spider-Man, so you're introduced from that kind of path. It's more of Marvel Ultimate Alliance is kind of introducing you to the whole scene. You're kind of getting a bit of everything at the one time.
Yeah, and it kind of, like, the whole, like, the story of the game as well is going from, like, point to point to point to point, like, for all of the sort of major locations of the Marvel universe.
It connected everything quite well.
Like, you go from, like, helicarriers at the start to Atlantis to Asgard to, like, the Sanctum where Doctor Strange lives, the Sanctum Sanctorum, and you go to Mephisto's realm, and you go everywhere, and it showcases that Marvel is a lot bigger than just New York City, like I've seen in
because
like Spider-Man and Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and X-Men are in New York, aren't they? Can't remember.
Honestly, I can't remember. I don't think they are sort of based in New York, but like, I know in the comics, like, now they still have a lot of stuff set in New York.
Yeah.
But I think they're outside New York.
I guess so the fucking, like, jet, it doesn't really limit them to a specific location, so they can kind of go global, I guess. So what do you think of the sequels for Ultimate Alliance? Because originally I played, like I said, we played it when we were kids, and I had no clue there was a sequel until, like, years onward. I was hoping for a sequel when I was a kid, but I never knew it actually existed. And then I found out recently there was a third game, which I think a lot of people wish didn't exist. So what do you think of the sequels?
Sequels? Well, the second game, I really enjoyed. It brought the gameplay up a notch. Like, being able to combine your different superheroes' moves to make even bigger moves, and that was lots of fun. And story was like my first real sort of look at a sort of superhero versus superhero conflict, because it handled the superhero civil war that happens in Marvel. Or it's not as in depth as the comics, but it still did an interesting take on it.
I never finished the second one, but isn't like Civil War, there is a plot that's kind of built up to the start, and then Civil War happens and that takes over kind of the middle part of the game, and then there's the other thing that happened that is the main
Yeah,
conflict at the end.
yeah, there is like a sort of big, super major conflict at the end. I can't remember the story fully. All I know is that you have to fight like an evil clone of Nick Fury that has been given the superpowers of almost everyone. It's insane.
They really wanted to try and one up like Doom from fucking the first game. I mean, I don't really think you can one up the whole him stealing the Odin Force and like fucking enslaving all of the world and all the superheroes and making clones and shit.
Cutscenes in the first game as well.
Oh yeah,
they were amazing.
Like the moments when you meet like a character within, a mission. I found it kind of boring how it was just like text on a screen and maybe occasionally a voice would be reading it out, but when they actually gave you cutscenes, oh my god, it was so fucking cool. I loved it so much.
Yeah, and but also comparing that to the second game, like they got on a whole different studio to do the cutscenes in the first game, but in the second game, when they did have cutscenes, it was the in-game engine. Like it wasn't like a big fancy cinematic. It was like them moving the characters' bodies in the game.
Yeah.
To do it, so it didn't seem as high quality, but I think they were just trying to rush out a second game for a bit more dough. Like I don't think I'd think that about every aspect, but the first game set up a sequel right at the end for you to go fight Galactus, the big huge bad guy that eats planets. And the reason for this is when you were playing through the game, you pissed him off because you stole shit that allows him to eat planets.
Yeah.
So he's come to Earth to fucking eat Earth because you did that to him. You pissed him off.
Okay.
And there was this little cutscene at the end of the first one that was him going, "Oh, I'm gonna eat your planet, man.
I'm gonna chomp chomp."
And then in the second game, there's no reference to that at all, like in the main story. You need to go out of your way to find Thor in one of the sort of hub areas in between missions.
Yeah.
And Thor just says that Galactus was trying to eat Earth and he beat him off camera.
That's so... That's so bullshit.
Yeah. Because they knew there was going to be some questions about why, cover Galactus at all, why they covered Civil War, and why they covered, whatever the hell it was at the end of that game, like, Jesus. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, a lot happened at the end of the second game.
I can barely remember. It's just fucking so much was going on.
But yeah, now on to the third game. The third game...
Oh, joy.
It's fun. I'll say that hands down right now. It's a fun game to play.
Okay.
I played through all of it and I enjoyed my time playing it. But there's a lot of things that I sort of dislike about it because the only reason why it's called Ultimate Alliance is because that is a franchise name that will sell. It's a different game. It's still a team. It's a big, huge superhero team up with characters from all over the Marvel universe getting together to fight a big threat.
Yeah.
It's its own individual story that's not connected to the other two games at all in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't reference anything that's happening. Like Doctor Doom is in prison in Asgard, like at the end of the first game. Like he's just floating about.
So it's like a soft reboot, or even just a reboot.
Yeah, it's like a complete and utter reboot. In all honesty, which is.
Is it supposed to be? I thought it was supposed to be the actual, like, canonically the third game.
Nah, I think it is meant to be like a complete and utter reboot because it's exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, and I don't think the other two games are even on the Nintendo Switch.
So Nintendo's kind of put out there as a means to get it onto our platform.
And they definitely got the rights to the name Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 because that would sell more boxes. Like,
yeah.
In all honesty, sure, it has a lot of like similar gameplay elements. But at times, it feels like you're playing a mobile phone game because you need to upgrade little parts of your characters. Like, yeah, sure, you had to upgrade your powers and stuff in the first game.
Yeah.
In this, you need to equip like a whole bunch of like different crystals to make your characters punch harder or to make your characters more effective. And you need to look up online guides so that you actually got good stuff equipped on your character. And
so there's very much like you need builds for specific characters.
Because otherwise, like, if you want to play, let's say, Spider-Man, like, if you want to play Spider-Man throughout the entire game, he's not super viable unless you have a specific assortment of crystals on him. Like, in the first two games, you can play whatever character you want all the way through and not really have much bother at all. Like, if you want to have a completely different team every single mission in the first two games, you can. Yeah, sure, they might be like a level or two lower than like all your other characters, but they'll level up off camera. They'll still level up.
Yeah, because you can enable the auto level up. Doesn't it like carry the levels over? So if you level up with one character, it kind of levels up for all, or everyone gets kind of shared XP at least?
It's like if you level up one character once, or no, if you level up one character twice, then every other character gets a level and a half, kind of. So you won't really have any characters that are a million miles ahead in the first game, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the second, but everybody will sort of still be at a level that you can play in any mission for.
It didn't kind of like...
In 3, yeah. But in 3, let's say you don't play with one character you get right at the start. If you want to swap to them later, they'll be level 1. So there's no auto leveling in 3.
So they're just gonna be severely underpowered.
Yeah. So it's either you always swap to your brand new characters that you get, or you have to constantly go back and play the earlier missions if you want to play with and like level up your other characters. So it's a bit tedious at times.
In terms of actual level balancing, I guess. So if you went and played through the campaign as one very specific character and got them to level 10, and then you switched to someone else who's level 1, would it be much more difficult to take on enemies as a level 1 like character you've never played before in this kind of point where you got to level 10? Because obviously the first one you did have the whole level system, but it felt very much like you weren't increasing like your actual stats, you were just unlocking new abilities. At least that's what I remember.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was, because to change your stats in the first game, you had to like...
Oh yeah, it was items.
Yeah, it was like items.
Yeah.
It was only one item as well, and
yeah, so
you'd have like a costume, and you could level up parts of that costume to change your stats.
Yeah.
It was super easy to do that. Like, you could smash a box and get enough money to like level up the first level of your character's outfit.
Yeah.
No, in 3, like a level 1 to level 10 sort of gap is quite big.
So it's very much pushing into the whole grind scene of it.
Yeah.
I guess that's obviously bad, but I guess it kind of does add a bit more for you doing the game. It's a bit more repetitive, yeah, but if you're someone that likes to... If you're a hardcore gamer, I guess, maybe someone would enjoy that. Personally, I don't really like that. I kind of prefer the old way they did it. I guess what I'm going to ask next, and this isn't on the script, this is just kind of something I've thought of in regards to you describing this game, and ultimately that will change my opinion of it being, is it a game that's just not for me, but I can kind of be like, meh? Or is it a game I think, oh wow, this is actually pretty bad? You mentioned how there was like crystals and stuff you could get for characters.
Yeah.
This is not stuff you can actually buy with real money. This isn't pay to win. This is just stuff you find in the world, correct?
Yeah, no, you don't pay to win.
Right, thank God. Thank God.
No. I think there's like an online multiplayer, but it's like co-op. I've not really touched on that. Only thing that I can say that is pay to win is the DLC, because some of the characters you get in the DLC are overpowered, because you get Jean Grey, X-Men DLC, and, you know, she has the Phoenix Force, one of the most powerful entities in the entirety of Marvel.
Fair to say, that's pretty OP.
It's a little bit OP, but again, like, you still have access to really powerful characters in the base game anyway, like Thanos and Thor.
You get Thanos?
Yeah. You can play as Thanos.
Yes, I can be Purple Raisin.
You can be the Purple Raisin.
I will be the Purple Raisin.
But yeah, no, like, I have gripes, but the game is still fun to play. Like, it is fun. You know how in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, how you have these big, huge, super ultimate combo moves?
Yes.
They removed that from 3.
Oh, yeah?
Not entirely. Like, they toned it down a little. Because now, instead of doing, like, the big, huge ultimate move, you can do sort of, like, increased move on your normal powers, because you can combine like your sort of 4 main powers with the other characters.
Okay.
So it's not as grand or epic as what it kind of felt like in 2.
So is it more like
an element of that?
Is it more like characters kind of giving them buffs, like a character given an R1 an increased defense rating?
No.
Stuff
It's...
like that, or...
Let's say you have like Iron Fist in Captain America.
Okay.
If you like, Captain America has like a shield move where he like holds his shield out in front of him that like protects him from projectile, and Iron Fist has a dash punch move, and you use both of those abilities against one another, then Iron Fist will do the dash punch against the shield, and that will cause that will cause like a mini explosion around Captain America.
Okay.
So
yeah, so kind of like that scene from the first Avengers.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad.
It's not as big as what that would have been in Ultimate Alliance 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little boost to make things a bit more interesting, and like almost any character with all of their moves can combine.
I do like that, because it feels like if it's just regular moves you can do, right? It's not obviously your ultimate. I kind of like that a little bit better, because it makes it work symbiotically, opposed to wait until you've got your full ultimate to combine moves.
You can do it a lot more often because of that too.
That's actually pretty cool. I like that. Okay, so moving on to the next thing I kind of want to talk about, Marvel's Avengers. So that was a game that kind of got a lot of hype when it first came out, but after it came out, a lot of people weren't big fans of it, or didn't like it, or hated it. But I think they're starting to kind of make a comeback with a lot of the content they're adding in over time, like, you know, the Hawkeye one and the Black Panther kind of update that's coming out, and so I guess my question is, what do you think it is that kind of turned a lot of people off to it, like, so soon on? And what do you think they're doing right with the new content that they're adding in that's bringing people back?
So, kind of a little teeny bit off topic, but I can still bring it back.
Okay.
The first reason why I personally got into it was because a lot of the things that they were promising, and I would say that they delivered to an extent.
Okay.
Not to the, like, they were promising a lot of, like, sort of unique character choices. So, like, I could level up my Captain America to be completely different from how your Captain America would be.
Yeah. So sort of like I guess a certain playstyle with, you could have certain, like, playstyles with different, or the same character.
So I would say quite a few people were maybe a bit off-put that like the skill trees in the game weren't quite as vast as what seemed to be promised. I would say that skill trees are still pretty wide. Are still good enough that I can say that they did deliver to an extent of what they promised.
Yeah, like, it feels more, it's not like different skill trees or different playstyle. It feels more like the skill trees are tailored to a specific ability. So I guess, yeah, they kind of deliver, but not maybe in the way people were expecting.
The real reason why I think people are off-put about the game is the grind.
Okay.
Because that one complaint I had about Ultimate Alliance 3 is taken to a whole new level in Marvel's Avengers.
Okay.
Because 10 level gap in difference in Ultimate Alliance 3, you can still make up for that. You can still be a level 1 fighting level 10 villains. It will be difficult,
but you can still do it.
You can still do it. It won't be insanely difficult. It won't be something that you'd struggle with immensely like it is in Marvel's Avengers. So you're wanting to sort of swap around characters in Marvel's Avengers, you'll struggle.
Okay.
If you have just one character that you play all the time and you're not really wanting to swap about with much, then you'll be great. You'll find the game quite fun for a while.
Okay.
Which is what I did. I really enjoyed playing Thor in that game, to the point where I could ignore the grind because I found Thor's gameplay really fun.
Oh yeah. I'd gotten to the point of where I've not technically unlocked him, but it's the bit where the helicarrier is falling out of the sky and he fucking, like, grabs his hammer and turns up. But yeah, I really enjoyed playing as Thor as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's also another thing. But missions in the story mode are fun. They're kind of unique. You do a whole array. You can do like a whole array of different things throughout the different story missions. Like, there's a few stealth sessions near the start of the game.
Yeah.
You have to sneak around and avoid robots and stuff, and then stuff gets gradually more and more grand and epic as the story mode goes on.
Yeah.
Once you get into the sort of multiplayer stuff that the game was, like, hyping itself on, it's all very much a halfway open world map.
Yeah.
You run about beating up the same enemies and doing the same objectives, and maybe sometimes there's a boss fight.
Okay.
So the multiplayer stuff in the game is severely limiting. The Hawkeye DLC, they've added quite a few new stuff to this. They've added more stuff to do, or like at least more objectives, so it's not quite as repetitive.
Okay.
and I think they changed the grind, so the grind isn't as bad anymore. So like you level up faster, you get equipable items faster.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as painful swapping characters, but it's still pretty bad. But the Black Panther update, which is coming out later this year, is why I think a lot of people are starting to go back to it, because not just because it's Black Panther, a really popular character at the moment, but because they're adding in a new story mode.
Okay.
I think it's called the War for Wakanda, and it's, like I said earlier, story mode of the game was my favorite part, and they're adding in another one. Like I'm actually quite excited to get to play that.
Yeah, I've actually gotten, well, as I already mentioned, I've gotten back into it quite a bit because of all this stuff that you told me it was coming out, which was like, yeah, I'll give it a wee try, and I've not played as much over the past week or so, but it's definitely recaught my attention, I would say. Okay, so kind of shifting over to another game, and I think this is probably one of your favorite topics to talk about, Spider-Man. Spider-Man. No. Okay, so Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man. You know, Spider-Man, the Spider-Man, the man of the spider,
the man of spiders,
the man spider, the man of the spider,
the human spider,
the human arachnid boy.
Arachnid boy. Okay. Anyway,
let me get on to the actual question. Sony and Marvel have kind of obviously brought out their Spider-Man game, like, what was it, 2018?
Yeah, it was 2018.
And we've talked about this before, but they've very much taken the whole, this universe is kind of already set up. So, like, you know, Peter Parker's already been bit the spider, he's already been Spider-Man for quite a few years now, he's experienced and much older. And in doing that, they've also kind of opened up the world to being a lot bigger, in the sense of you have references to the Avengers, you have references to Wakanda, you have references to Doctor Strange and all that shit. So, do you think that, obviously with the Avengers game, I don't think they would probably do it as much with that, because, you know, that's already a thing, and it's already separate canon, but do you think they are kind of building up a Marvel kind of game universe within the Spider-Man games?
In all honesty, no, I don't.
Okay.
Do I want them to be? Absolutely. It would be amazing.
Spectacular, even.
Ultimate.
Oh yeah,
definitely not superior.
Oh god, no! It would not be. It could not. No, I don't think it could be superior. No. Yeah, it definitely can be superior. No, that'd be very. I think that would be a very cool idea to have the whole MCU, but done through, you know, video games. That'd definitely be an interesting take, and I think it'd be the next step with the whole building up. Obviously not cinematic, but a kind of universe like that. I'm kind of surprised they haven't done it with that many games where you have this bigger universe of different franchises that come together to world build.
Like you said, get an assortment of different individual Marvel games structured like the PS4 one, and then like a sort of combined game.
Yeah.
That, like, I think that would be amazing, but that would take probably about twice as long as the MCU has currently been going.
Yeah.
To get to the first team up.
20 years and we finally get the Avengers game where it's uniting a bunch of other games.
Yeah. So, while it would be probably one of the best gaming experiences, it would be very impractical.
Yeah, I can get that. As much as it pains me that it's probably not going to happen, I can understand why. So, Miles Morales is kind of a character they introduced to through the PS4 game as a kind of side character at first, and then obviously you have the DLCs that mention how Miles is in training and, you know, Peter is training him, and then you get the game. You get the kind of spin-off game that is more about Miles. So, how do you feel that the Miles Morales game was at giving Miles his own story? And do you think there's ever going to be a time through the Marvel Spider-Man, like, timeline where at one point it's going to end with Peter hanging up his web shooters and Miles will take over as the main Spider-Man?
Okay, so to answer your first question, I think the game, like the spin-off game that was made, did an amazing job at showing Miles as being a completely different person from Peter.
Yeah.
Or a completely different Spider-Man from Peter. Showing him that he's got his own story, because Peter's in the Spider-Man game in 2018. That was very much this threat is going to kill everyone in New York. Spider-Man does what he always does and goes to save the day because that he's doing this out of guilt and obligation for what he thinks he did to his uncle. Right? It's like a very standard Spider-Man story, but it's told very well. Miles Morales' story feels a lot more personal. It's about him helping out a community he's just joined from corporate sabotage. Not corporate sabotage. It's like people aren't sabotaging a corporation. A corporation is sabotaging their...
Yeah, so it's like corporate takeover.
Yeah, corporate takeover, kind of. It goes into stuff about him and his uncle, Aaron Davis. Like, that's actually quite a big part of the story, and yet you have to end up fighting his uncle. So Miles Morales actually feels more like an origin story game, whereas Spider-Man game...
picking up off of information we already kind of know.
Yeah, it was like throwing you into a story, and I think that's actually a very good choice that they did. It makes you feel like you have a more personal connection with Miles rather than
being thrown at a character that you don't necessarily know very well. Because like obviously you have the Spider-Verse movie, but outside of that, Miles isn't a very well-known comic book character. Like he's relatively new in terms of in the public eye, I would say. So yeah, I definitely agree with the whole making it more of an origin story for Miles, opposed to doing what they did with Spider-Man, where this has been who he is for X amount of years, but you already know that.
Everybody knows the story of Peter Parker. And a little side jab here. I think this Avengers game, not the Avengers game, the first Spider-Man game did a much better job at telling a Spider-Man story without talking about his origin than the MCU movies did.
Yeah.
But away from that, and on to your second question that you asked me about this, do I think Peter Parker will give up his mantle to Miles entirely? First of all, no I don't. Like, from a sort of monetary thing, I can't see that happening, at least for a little while. I don't mean like after the next game he's like, I'm done being Spider-Man and Miles is the new Spider-Man. I mean like after quite a few iterations within this kind of franchise. Okay, then yeah, but not in the way you might expect.
Okay.
I think the first game, second game that they're making, I think they're still making the sequel that should be covering a lot of Venom stuff.
Hell yeah.
Because there's been leaked images of a Venom advanced suit that looks really nice. I'll actually send you those later.
Oh, okay. Now I'm very excited.
Yeah. But then I think there'll be a third game that focuses on Peter that he will die at the end of.
Oh, okay.
And then that's when Miles, if they're going to take it in a direction where Miles fully takes over the mantle and Peter's not there, because the only way Peter will ever stop being Spider-Man is if he dies or if he physically cannot do anything.
Like ends up having like some sort of spinal injury and he can't use like his arms or legs again or some shit.
Because there's a lot of comics where Peter is in his 70s. Not a lot of comics, but there's like a number of comics where Peter's in his 70s, maybe even 80s.
Old man Spider-Man.
He's old man Spider-Man.
Old man.
Spider Old Man. But yeah, and in the comics as well, where Miles was first introduced, and it was even shown in the Spider-Verse movie. If Miles is to be the Spider-Man, Peter dies, and that's fine. This is something that has happened.
It is literally the reason why they initially created him, because they wanted a kind of newer Spider-Man, so they killed off Peter, and then they created Miles.
Yeah. I honestly think was a good call, because I read the Ultimate Comics with Spider-Man, and he was kind of a terrible person.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, like I'm not gonna get into it too much, but the Peter Parker in the Ultimate Comics wasn't...
I thought you were talking about Miles in the Ultimate Comics.
Oh no! Miles is great. Like the Miles from the Ultimate Comics is the same Miles from the main comics now, because I think there was a whole big thing where the Ultimate Universe and the main universe like collided.
Okay.
And like now Miles is in the main universe forever.
Miles is in the main canon.
Because he was so popular.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
Wait, were the Ultimates the really fucked up ones that had a shit ton of gore and shit like that? And it was implied that Quicksilver and his sister were a little too close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm
pretty sure that was implied in like the main comics as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Didn't
Oh,
go
God.
into as much detail.
Oh god, I think any
Go
detail's
into
a bit
as
too
much
much detail.
Yeah, it's like Sweet Home Alabama starts playing.
Oh god. Oh no.
Oh no!
Oh no.
But yeah, anyway, I don't think they will kill off Peter, but I do think that after a third game they will put a lot more focus on Miles.
Yes.
Like sort of taking the series forward. Hell, maybe even the third game, or even the second game, it's going to have a mixed sort of a mixed gameplay stance where you swap between
Oh yeah,
sort
okay.
of the tech and gadget heavy Peter, and then the sort of more power focused with his bioelectricity stuff with Miles.
Yeah. Or even
That
like
would-
the more I think Miles is a bit more interesting in the stealth section because obviously you have the fucking like the chameleon ability where you can just go completely invisible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think they could do that with a whole you go Peter for this section, then you go Miles for either a stealth section or this section where you need a lot of power.
Even with the whole sort of Venom stuff that's going to be brought in, it could even have a fight with Miles fighting symbioted Peter.
Oh, okay, that'd be very. I like that. That's very cool. That's a very cool idea.
I actually really like the idea of that too.
Yeah, that's fucking amazing.
Spectacular.
But it's not superior. It's never gonna be superior. I hope not. At least.
Superior.
Never. Don't ever be superior.
That would be disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like, do I think that there's going to be a lot more mild focus? 100%. Do I like maybe even like again like with the Miles game, Peter was like away on holiday in another country with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I think they might do stuff like that again, even though it would be quite cheap. But I don't think it's going to be 100% Miles unless they kill Peter off.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of know you for more like your interest in Marvel, but do you like DC stuff as well, or is it more Marvel that is kind of your thing?
I much prefer Marvel. Like I'm not gonna lie, I much prefer Marvel. I do like DC games.
Yep.
I've not played as much of them, but I have played some of them.
So what ones have you played? Have you played any of the like Arkham series?
I think I've only played one of the Arkham games. I could not tell you which one. I do remember that I enjoyed it.
Fair enough. What about DC Universe Online? Is that something you've kind of heard of, or if you know of it?
It is a game that I have tried to play before, and it's nothing against it being a DC game, nothing at all. I actually really like what they're trying to do with it, that like you can make your own character, you can make your own hero, and then just sort of throw them into the DC universe and take them on a big huge grand story. I love that. It's the MMO part.
That's fair.
Because I have tried to play so many MMOs. I just struggled to get into them. I think there was like one Star Wars MMO that I managed to get into.
The Old Republic.
Yeah, the Old Republic.
Yeah.
I've just stopped playing it, and I just haven't gotten back into it since.
No, yeah, I literally picked it up for the first time yesterday because I was like, oh, this is a cool game. And then I had to go away for a couple of days, so I didn't have any internet, so I couldn't download it. Then I got back, picked it up for the first time the other day. I was like, this isn't very good, is it? It's not...
Like the story in it is really good. Once you get past the starting areas, the story picks up a lot.
Yeah.
It's an MMO.
Yeah.
It's long.
It feels very much like it's... And this is just the way MMOs are, so maybe it's just because I'm not the target audience, because I'm not... Like, the only MMOs I could say I like are probably DC Universe Online, and that's only because of what you can do in it, opposed to the fact it's an MMO. But I'm not a big fan of the whole, it's endless. There is no, like, narrative conclusion. It's just constantly ongoing, so it's not really... At least I don't think it's a very well-tailored story, at least. I don't know. But yeah, MMO's bad. That's the conclusion.
Well, not necessarily. There's like a couple of ideas of MMOs that I really quite enjoy. But like, it's either it needs to have a very strong story or no story at all for me. Where it's like you make your own story. You go out on your own adventures.
Yeah.
And
so like Fear of the Mind.
yeah, so it's like you can just pick any quest and go on it. And like there's no really main quest. And the more quests you do, that can affect the state of the actual online world. I like those types of MMOs.
That's definitely a very appealing aspect. I gotta say.
Yes. DC Universe Online, great idea. It's just I struggled to get into MMOs.
I'm exactly the same. I did try and play, we call it Skyrim Online because my friends keep forgetting that it's called the Elder Scrolls, but we just couldn't. That's all I'll say, we just couldn't because it was an MMO, because of the whole, I don't know, we wanted
to win.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that, but we didn't get far enough to get to the point of where it was asking me for a price tag because we never got off the tutorial island. At least I never.
Yeah, and the fact that you need to pay a pretty hefty price tag to pay it in the first place.
Like, it's like that joke I said the other day where it's like, oh, if you sold all of your Steam library, maybe you would be able to play, like, the Elder Scrolls Online.
Maybe half the game of Elder Scrolls
Yeah,
Online.
yeah.
Not even.
Okay, so moving on, and this is another game we kind of talked about a little bit, Gotham Knights, and
Yes.
you said that you feel as if the characters wouldn't feel, except from Red Hood, wouldn't feel as unique to play as. So everyone would kind of very much feel like, I'm going to use Ash's catchphrase here, same bitch, different font.
Yes.
Do you kind of still feel that the characters would kind of be like that, where it is pretty much same bitch, different font, with the exception of Red Hood?
To an extent, I've been catching up a bit more on a lot of the Bat family characters, and a lot of them act and they do fight differently. Like, Damian Wayne straight up just swings a sword around the place.
Yeah, little sociopath.
Little sociopath. And then you have Nightwing that uses like quite a lot of electricity and like Cali sticks to beat up crime.
Yeah.
And then like again, Batgirl is a bit more punchy, I guess, than the others.
She feels a bit more acrobatic, at least from like the DLC they brought out for Arkham Knight donkeys ago, where you were playing as her in the past. She felt very acrobatic. That's the best way I can kind of put it in.
Yeah, especially compared to Batman.
Oh yeah, because he's like he's a huge tank. He's supposed to be this big walking muscle. Yeah,
He's a chunk.
he's thick.
He's thick.
He's
boy.
thick, especially with all that armor.
So yeah, I think my opinion after getting to know the characters a bit more has changed, but I think there will be a level of uniqueness where like the combat feels different, but I still think there'll be a lot of aspects in it that will be very similar because a lot of them use a lot of the same gadgets. I still think Red Hood will be an extreme difference.
Oh yeah,
man just walks around with a Glock.
Man just walks around with a pair of guns and, like, instead of batarangs, throws throwing stars. Just like a common thug, but with all the training.
Yeah. So yeah, my view on the game is a lot more positive than it was before, than just a whole bunch of like the same characters but in different skins. Ultimately, I think there will be a lot of different like aspects to characters that they can explore.
Okay.
Than I did before.
Would you say that's kind of like you looking into this and it's kind of changed your opinion a bit? Is that enough to make you want to get the game, or is that just like, oh, I mean, that's not as bad as I thought, but whatever?
Less me thinking that the characters are going to be unique, or more unique, and more I like the characters more because I've read into them a lot more, so I'm more willing to get the game now to see the story. Because before, I wasn't really interested in the story because I wasn't really interested in the characters, but now I am, so that's a whole different aspect to the game that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. The only issue I actually have with the game is how they've handled... I don't know if you can even call it leaks because they've outright said it, where they've kind of spoiled what the final boss is going to be, or at least I think they did. I don't know, maybe this is just some manipulative move. I'm not going to say it because, you know, it may be a spoiler.
I've not heard of these leaks, so I'd rather if you didn't.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm keeping my mouth shut. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Marvel, we've talked a lot about DC, probably more Marvel than DC, but...
Oh, yeah.
It seems, in terms of competition, the movie scene is probably not much to question who's ahead of who. It's very obvious who is winning in that.
Yeah.
How do you think the video game market or the video game scene is in terms of the competition? Do you think it's kind of as one-sided, or do you think it's maybe a bit more balanced?
I think it's still skewed in Marvel's favor, like the movies. The comics are very much 50-50.
Oh yeah.
But the games, I think, and it's not anything against the DC games, but the Marvel games, there's just a lot more of them.
That's true, because like when you think of DC games, what's the first one you think of? Arkham. Like the first one that people think of, I guess.
Only non-Batman related game I can like think of. The Batman games are in this upcoming new
Gotham Knights.
Arkham Knight. Gotham Knights, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all super heavy Batman oriented, or yeah, Batman sort of orientated.
Yeah.
Then there is the DC Universe Online MMO. And then there's the Injustice fighting games.
Honestly, I've played a fair amount of Injustice, yet it slipped my mind.
I cannot think of any other. Actually, I can think of one other DC game, and that is DC versus Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
And those are over-the-top fighting games,
Mhm.
an MMO that a lot of people would lose interest in very quickly, and then Batman games. Whereas
Marvel has a bit more. It's a bit more inclusive to different, people's interests, I think, because you have a bit more variation of different type of games.
I enjoy a lot of the DC games. I just think they should branch off a little bit more than just Batman, because like I said at the very start, I would kill for a good Flash game.
There was one guy a long while ago. He stopped production on it because I think he got a deceased and desist letter from DC because they were using.
That was the worst.
Thank you. But yeah, he got a cease and desist letter from.
Did it again.
It's not even intentional. I'm trying to be genuine that time.
Okay, I get what you mean. Continue.
Yeah. He got that letter from DC telling him to stop because you're using all these characters that we own and we don't want you using that, because he was making a very open world game. And obviously, we've already discussed how characters need to be a bit more different. They need to be a bit more unique, because that's why you're gonna, I mean, yeah, there is the skin, so people might want to play as 4 because they like him better, but you need to actually make it feel as if you're playing as 4, and you can tell the difference between when you're playing as another
Thor
character.
or Black Widow.
Yes, precisely. But there is also a lot of games typically have a level of where it can still feel like obviously the same game. It's a good little sweet spot of different but the same. But with this game, it was supposed to be a very much an open world game that was set around the Arrowverse. Now, I don't really give that much of a shit about Arrow. I was sort of interested in Flash for a wee bit, then I lost interest. But you essentially had all these characters from all this, the kind of Arrowverse that you could play as, and every character was very much as far to being as different as possible. So it made it feel very much like you could essentially feel like you were playing a different game. And this was in development for quite a wee while, actually. But then
I can imagine.
But then they got the season.
Again.
I fucked up to say the joke, then I made the joke, and now I can't stop. I can't stop. The joke is just eternal.
Oh, Alistair, stop! You're making the joke is becoming deceased.
Oh no, the joke is becoming deceased. I can't stop.
Oh
no. But yeah, they got the stop it letter from DC, so that kind of got just stopped all right together. About 2-3 years ago, I think, maybe a bit longer. So that was kind of tragic, because it sounded from everything I'd kind of seen on it, it was going to be a really cool game, because you could do all the shit that the Flash could do from the show, where you could do the fucking tornado shit, but it wasn't a set move, so you would actually do it, kind of thing.
You'd have to spin around in circles really fast.
You have to spin around really fast. So yeah, that kind of got shit canned.
This is the first time hearing about this, and it sounds pretty tragic.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. I could be wrong. I could be entirely wrong, and I could be making this up. But if my memory serves me correctly, this was supposed to be a game that was essentially only going off of Patreon. So essentially, what was being donated to it, and the actual guy's money. So it was pretty much completely crowdfunded, and I'm pretty sure it was going to be a free to play game, or it was going to be a very cheap game when it eventually came out. And obviously DC weren't very happy about this, and it got assassinated.
I hope DC reimbursed all the people that donated.
I hope so as well. I hope so too.
Because I can imagine there's always going to be a couple of people that will donate a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh yeah. You get the person who will donate $100.
$100 grand.
Yeah, or a couple of grand.
I know a couple of $100 definitely, but I've seen quite a few of these sort of crowdfunded projects and games or TV shows or whatever, and they go pretty wild with just some people that see an idea that they really like, so they just
throw
unload
a grand
or
at
two
it.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, I imagined, like, 100-odd quid onward would be, like, you know, that's pretty nuts. But $1,000, Jesus.
Yeah, like, again, I can't say anything about this specific one, but there's this YouTube show called Critical Role, and they're making their own TV show. And they crowdfunded it so that they could make the show themselves without needing to go to a big studio for it. And I think their overall budget was, like, just under $1 million.
Oh.
Or, like, yeah, like, so it was, like, maybe not just under $1 million, it was, like, I think it was, they have a lot of fans, so if, like, every single one of their fans donated $1, they would have made their goal. It was, like, $750,000 for one episode.
Jesus.
And within, like, a week or so, we got to 11 million.
Holy Christ.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And there wasn't even 1 million backers, Alistair.
Jesus.
I think there was, like, 10,000 backers.
And they just donated a shit ton.
Yeah, it's insane how far people will go for
to see something
for
like
these crowdfunding projects.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like.
But yeah, I think I've discussed everything I kind of wanted to ask you, along with a little bit more. You did a good job, Cameron. Give yourself a pat on the back. You did a good job.
Can't reach.
Oh, you know what? Just I'll send you a biscuit round. You've earned a biscuit. You've earned a chalky biscuit for your good work. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome.
This has been the second episode of the podcast, and sorry, you were saying something?
I think I need to go soon. Because,
Assassins?
I've been away from the Assassins. I've been away from my presidency a little bit too long. Like,
yeah.
Whenever I'm not sitting in my office chair, I'm technically not the president, so...
Actually, you know what? You know what? Let me pull up Google and let me check, see how that's doing. Hold on. Let me just get up Google a sec. Oh yeah, okay, they've went in complete anarchy.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what? They couldn't handle, an hour without me, then they deserve to be in anarchy.
Get what they fucking deserve. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. This has been the second episode of the podcast, and until next time. Wow, that was a very, very awesome episode. I really enjoyed the part where they talk about yeah. Anywho, on the next episode, I'm going to be bringing on another guest, and we're going to be talking about decision-based cinematic video games. I don't know how else to describe them, so stick around to catch that one, and I'll see you on the flip side.